everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Book. Yay! We are so excited to have you. I hope you guys have been enjoying our month of love, how we've been bringing our own little twist to what God says about love and how it's worked in our lives. Hopefully that can be a good example for you and you've taken away some good nuggets. We are so excited. We're going to get into it. We're going to be talking about families today. We're going to be talking, all of us have kind of a different background of what our families look like, the makeup of our families. And so we're going to share that with you guys and kind of talk about what God says about that. And so, Takia, can you give us a kingdom key that talks about family?
Of course I can. I'm coming from the Amplified. I'm coming over. The passion's still there, but come on, read on with me. King James, New NIV, whatever you want. It's gonna read about the same. Here we go. Ephesians 6. I'm going to read 1 through 4. Okay. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. That is, accept their guidance and discipline as His representatives. For this is right. For obedience teaches wisdom and self-discipline. Honor, esteem, value as precious your father and your mother, and be respectful to them. This is the first commandment with the promise, so that it will be well with you and that you will have long life on earth. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, nor by showing them favoritism or indifference to any of them, but bring them up tenderly with loving kindness in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Again, that was Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. So many times I remember as children, as being a child, right? That was a scripture that was drilled into us. Honor your mother and father so your days be longer on the earth. And we had that scripture, and as a child didn't necessarily understand that. As a parent, I understand it, and now I have the wisdom of parenting, still using that scripture. So I don't put demands on my children just for the sake of demands. We don't put demands on our children just for the sake of demands. Back then, used to be, and we're going to get into the stories, but we grew up, kids were to be seen and not heard. I got popped in my mouth a whole lot of times because I just didn't believe that as a child, let alone as a parent. But that was one of the things that they used to connect with that scripture. Like, respect your mom and your dad, and sit here and be quiet. And if I want to say something, I'd be like, pop in my mouth, and they would quote that scripture. Again, didn't go for it then, and I understand it as wisdom now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive a little deeper, as Tammy already stated, and we're going to talk about the different makeups of our families and really just elaborate more on the scripture and what it means. Here we go. Y'all ready? Come on, let's go.
We're going beyond the letters on the page, coming to a deeper understanding. We're revolutionary. We're going beyond the book. We're going beyond the book. Oh, yeah. We're going beyond the book. Going beyond the book. We're going beyond the book.
Why don't we start out by doing a quick introduction of who we are and some little, nobody knows about us as a couple.
Sounds right. Oh, we're the Davises.
Hi, Davises.
The Davis Show, as my husband calls it on Facebook, the Davis Show. Because there's always something going on, right? Always. We have been married for 16, it'll be 17 years next month. That time is going really fast. Super excited. We have 2 children, Lauren and KJ, and they are Lauren will be 16 this year, and KJ he'll be 14.
Wow, very nice.
We have teenagers. Thinking about a fun fact for us. So our marriage was tested right out the gate
by the father of the bride.
So on our wedding day, we get done with the ceremony, and I'm not knowing all that this going on. This is told afterwards. So I go to the reception, and apparently my dad, who just walked me down the aisle, I asked him, "Hey, Dad, you coming up to the reception?" He's like, "No, I'm going. I got some things I need to take care of." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "But I'll be back." I was like, "Okay." This dude done went and repoed my new brother-in-law's car right off the parking lot.
Said he had to go to work. So he went to work. He changed out of his tuxedo that he just walked his daughter down to the aisle. I married her, changed into his work clothes, went outside, took my brother's car.
When I say tested right out the gate,
Welcome
right out. Welcome to the family. So on our first marriage night, we get a call and they're like, hey, this is what happened. Did you know about this? And I'm like, no, I didn't know about it. Called my dad. I'm like, Dad, you starting family drama on day one. What's going on? He was like, I ain't do nothing. Yeah, the start of the Davis Show. It started 17 years ago. But that's us. Who else is on the line? Who else is on the line? Come on, tell us a little bit about yourself.
We are the Govers, Tamara and
Darius.
And we have been married for 5 years in July, and we have a 11-year-old daughter. She just turned 11, y'all. She's my little baby. But anyway, a fun fact about us. We're both artists, and so typically for our honeymoon, or I call it honeymoon every time, but typically for our anniversary, we try to do a trip where we go somewhere nice. And so we had went to Jamaica, and we had both had an engagement the next day for the end of our trip. Right at the end of our trip was, I think, came back like on we were supposed to come back like on a Monday, or we were coming back on a Friday, and we had an engagement that Saturday. And so we're gathering all of our things. We get to the airport and we realize we don't have our passports because we left them at the resort. And so we had now we had left our resort with like 6 hours before our flight. But since we had so much time, I was like, babe, let's stop. We can go shopping. We can do all this stuff, you know. So we get to the airport like maybe like 30 minutes before we should have. So we don't have any extra time. Like, we got to go through customs. We got to do all of this stuff. We don't have a whole lot of time. And so we're trying to figure, like, we're hustling, trying to figure out how we're going to get these passports. We get shafted by the people there. They gave us the wrong information. We end up having to go all the way back to the resort, which was in a different city. And then back to the airport. And our taxi driver, we were like, now, we'll take you if you can be fast. Like, we don't have very much time, because there was one flight right behind ours, and we talked to the agent. She said, as long as you get here by the second flight, we can get you on the second flight. But that's the last flight that leaves out of Jamaica today. So we're like, okay. We are riding, and he is now on the way. Speedy Gonzalez. I mean, he's ducking, he's diving. We're getting there. On the way back, this brother's stopping. I remember when I was a young boy, and no, this is not a tour guide. Get us to the airport. He takes his sweet time getting us. We get to the airport, and we have missed our flight. Not only have we missed our original flight, we missed the second flight. There's no more flights out until the evening of the next day. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? We end up having to get a hotel. I got on the hotel website. We get a hotel. We were thinking it was a hotel that was across the street from the airport. No, it's all the way at the top of the mountain. So we have to go drive all the way up to this airport. There's no food, there's nothing. So we end up ordering a pizza. It took us like 2 hours to get our pizza. It was just a nightmare. It cost almost $1,000 to get out the next day, because we actually had to buy new tickets. Basically, it was outrageous. Yeah. So that was the testing of our time. That was our 1 year anniversary. And so we definitely, I said, if we can make it through all of that foolishness, and we missed our engagement, which was just crazy. We had to cancel that. So it was just really crazy. But I was like, hey, we can make it through this, baby. We ain't here to win it.
I know that's right. You got travel with you, some issues.
What's it?
Because our first year anniversary, we went on a cruise, no?
Oh, you're right. See,
And we are the Brown. I am Dee, and this is
Robert.
and we have been married for 4 years. Our anniversary is in May of this year. We have 8 children in a combined family. I was previously married, and we have had 19 years in that marriage. And Robert had how many years?
19.
Yeah. So you had 19 years. I had 20 years. But I'm only 27, everybody. Never forget that. Never forget, boo. Perpetually 27. And so we have a lot of different perspectives here at the table tonight. We have a lot of different experiences with from very small children all the way to adult children. So hopefully this programming will be able to give everybody a little sprinkle. How about that?
Come on, sprinkle.
Sprinkle. Sprinkle them all. Sprinkle them all. So let's kind of open up with some perspectives. I know that things are a lot different. I know every generation says that, right? So your parents were like, oh, things were different when we were growing up. And the parents before them, oh, things were different. You know, they had to walk 10 miles in the snow to get to school for every single parent. Okay, you lived in the desert. Y'all ain't had no snow. And so every parent has this story. But it's true that each generation, so many things change. So many things. And for this generation, COVID is just a reality. It's something they're faced with every day, as if e-learning wasn't enough, even before COVID happened, if e-books weren't enough already. Now you have all this extra something happening in the background. So for those of you who have children who are a school age, what is your perspective about that?
Whew, let's say COVID. Whew. Wow, we had the blessing of being both working from home, so that was great for us when it comes to them having to come home for COVID and learning on school online and everything. But as it related to them, it was interesting because my daughter, who was straight A student, easy, like look at an assignment, get it, boom, done. She struggled. She struggled with the not having that interaction with the children, and my son did too. But my son, he doesn't stay in his room. He don't stay in one place. He's gonna go from this place to this place, and that's just him. He's an extrovert all day long. Whereas my daughter, she just stayed in her room and went through her classes, and she hung out in her room, and it actually caused her like to go through a depression. And we had to figure it out, and we didn't really put thumbs on it until her grades came out and she had an F. And I was like, wait a minute, first as the teacher, if your straight A student has an F, you should already send the email to the parents. But then I was talking to my husband, I was like, wait a minute, how did we miss this? But what we seen was her doing her work and her doing what she was supposed to do, but we didn't keep a pulse on her emotionally. So when she came out of her room, she would eat and then she would be back in her room. And so we talked about it. And so she was like, well, I'm in the same space. And I was like, well, babe, I didn't tell you had to stay in the same space. I thought you were in your room because you just chose to be in your room, you know? And so once we had that conversation and talked everything through, she was okay. But COVID and them learning, some of them really just struggled. I know, again, Lauren seemed like she had more of an issue with it than my son did. So just getting that, and she's very much a hands-on learner, so she hated to not be able to be in the classroom and actually get the instructions and, everything that goes on with classroom learning. So I think COVID, most definitely, we're like 2 years in, and I feel like we're just coming around to her having her straight A's again. So it was very much a process. And while that first year, that first F, we got it right under control, but it really just kept on going. And so we had to start keeping pauses and keeping conversations going and keeping things going. And it was something that we never had to deal with that in her before. So it was most definitely an adjustment. And again, we're 2 years in, and we're just now starting to see things return back to some level of normalcy.
Yeah,
with her.
some kids really do need that structure,
Mhm.
that traditional school structure, and so our daughter just happened to be one of those kids. Our son, not so much, but she definitely thrived in that environment. And so when that structure was taken away, to be more specific, when they would say, this is your class, you have to be logged in for 5 minutes, but then you don't have to be on after that. Right. Like that was a real thing. Like the teachers would be like, you have to log in for 5 minutes for us to take attendance, but then you don't have to be on after that. And so what it began to communicate to our daughter is that it wasn't necessary for her to be present. Like, and obviously she wasn't physically present, but for her, it meant I don't have to be mentally or emotionally present either. So she started missing assignments. She started it's like all this stuff that would not have happened if she was in a traditional school structure, because they have accountability. It's like, this assignment's due at this date, this assignment's due at this date. But when it went to e-learning, all of a sudden it was like, well, just get it to me when you get it to me. Like a lot of the structure just went out the window, and I don't blame the teachers, because they were just trying to figure it out too. I'll be honest; they were just really this had never happened before, and a lot of them didn't even have structures in place to do e-learning for every single class. And so in a lot of those areas, we had to start really checking in. Did you do this? When did you turn this in? So we had to provide the structure that she lost. We even had to start taking away our phone, because that became a major distraction. And when the phone got taken, then the grades went up. You know what I mean? Because now she didn't have anything to focus all of her attention on. And so it was really beneficial. It was a challenge at first, but we've learned. It was like, okay, this is what our child needs. Whereas my son, it really didn't matter. E-learning or in school, he's the same. He's the same. His grades really didn't fluctuate. So you really have to be mindful of what your child needs. I know there were some kids other kids that started experiencing emotional issues, depression, other things, because they couldn't see their friends. Some of these kids really do need that. That's how, and a lot of them, that's the best way they can learn. It's not that they can't learn other ways, but being in that environment puts them in their best place to learn. And so for our child, it was like we had to start trying to create an environment that was like school, that she could, get her priorities back in order.
And I had to actually start teaching. Like, I went to YouTube and learned the lessons, and then started teaching her the lessons, because just that, again, that teaching and getting it online, she just couldn't deal with it. So I was like, okay, let me look at your syllabus. Let me see what it is. I'll go learn whatever it was, and we had class, and it worked out. So I think through this, we've had to adjust, and the children have had to learn themselves in a new space. We've had to learn parenting in a new space. Like, all this is new, and all we can do is process accordingly. As you see things changing, tap in and do the best you can with the situation.
And Govers, do you all have a perspective about that? How are things working with your child?
I think with Derry, it didn't matter to her at all. She liked to be on her iPad and on computer stuff anyway, so it didn't affect her at all, honestly.
Well, my niece, she is a social butterfly. And when I say honey, she flies. And so when COVID hit, her brother was totally cool. He do his work, he in his room, he get it done, he play his games. He gonna be in his room all day anyway, so that's right up his alley. But with her, she begged her mother every week, can I go to school this week? Can I go to school this week? Can I go to school this week? And my sister was like, you are not going into COVIDville. No, like anti-school, because she was so afraid that they would get sick. And so she just wouldn't let my niece go. And like I said, she is a social butterfly. So it was very traumatic for her. It was a very traumatic experience on her behalf. And I find that extremely interesting and I wonder how this will play out in years to come, how this will look on that generation, as, for just their development as people. So this will be interesting for sure. And as I stated earlier, we are all of a very diverse experience here on this platform. Do you all find that there are any challenges to your co-parenting experiences?
I can say my daughter's mother, she'll make it harder at all. We able to come together, us three. I think they kind of got a relationship together, so we able to co-parent just fine, honestly, which is very surprising. But yeah.
What a blessing! What a blessing!
It is a blessing. We don't have the drama. Very early on, we both came all to the agreement that we're all here to have Darian have the best life, and we're all, that's our goal is the same. And so we can support one another in that endeavor, make it easy, keep the drama, then it works, and it has.
Davises, do you have any different perspectives that were challenging in the beginning when you first had children, and now you've either come to a compromise about that perspective or you've taken the other person's?
I wanted to beat them at an early age.
I knew he was going to talk about that.
My philosophy is if they can understand no and use the word no and tell you no, then them little legs can get tapped. I mean, that's how I feel about it. If I tell you that you can't have something and you look me in my face and tell me no, you understand what I'm saying to you. You understand, what I'm saying? It's not that you don't understand, you're just being a child and you're just, it's like, no, you. And so Takia and I disagreed on that. And so our compromise was actually pretty simple. She would go to work and then I would beat them. And so.
And not beat in real life, people.
No. I didn't abuse the children.
Not beat in real life.
They're still here. No. It was just like, I was at home because I worked at home. Like she said, she wasn't doing that yet. And I was already doing that. And so, but I had to work and deal with the kids at home. And so my daughter, she's obviously older than my son. She's the oldest. And so she was 9 months and it was our first child. We had baby proofed everything like normal, first parents would do. Everything is baby proof, but it didn't matter. She was knocking the plastic off the edge of the tables. She was climbing over the little plastic gates that keep you put in front of the doorway. She was climbing over it, like literally finding grooves in the little gate, stuck her foot in it, carefully, strategically climbing over that thing. She was climbing up our entertainment center. Listen, having a conversation with that person is not going to work. Okay. So I had to pop the leg and help her understand. It's like, hey, no, you can't do that. You know what I mean? No, I really spent a lot of time just trying to make sure they were safe. And that was my main issue because our kids were not just sitting still. We didn't actually, did we ever have a playpen?
Yeah, we did have one, and Lauren climbed right out of it.
Like that stuff never worked for us. So we had to just employ different ways of getting them to listen, you know what I mean? And so Takia was the talker. She, sit down the 6-month-old and try to have a conversation, like with a 6-month-old. I wasn't doing it. So I just because at that age, I feel like that's not how they learn, you know what I mean? And so we didn't really compromise. I just did stuff behind her back.
But now that they're older, right? If they're older, we
do a lot of talking.
We do a lot of talking now, and that's been my number one thing, even before they were born. It was very important that we kept open doors of communication. I never wanted to be that parent, children to be seen and not heard. I wanted my children to be able to talk and express everything, regardless if we agreed with it or not. And I never wanted them to be scared to come to us about anything.
Not in a disrespectful way.
Not in a disrespectful way, yeah. Right. And so my children understand that they have an open door. They can come to us with anything. Now, if they choose to or not, and some other things. But it's helped them to be real open in their conversation, even with their friends. Like my son was talking to his friends. He was like, I've already decided I'm not going to do drugs and I'm not going to do what did he say? I'm not going to do drugs and I'm not going to do something else. He said, well, when I turn 21, I'm going to the bar to get a drink. And I laughed so hard. I was like, well, babe, when KJ turns 21, we'll be in the bar drinking because I'm going to be there with him. Because I'm just that parent. I'm going to be there to help you and make sure you're safe and all that other stuff. But I mean, we most definitely keep communication.
That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's what we're dealing with now.
Let's drink together. Let's do the illegal things together. Son.
And understand, I was a child that I was very sneaky. And that's the reason I was very sneaky. I was raised in a very strict home. And so I never wanted my children to feel like they had to be sneaky to do anything. Whether or not I agree with you or not, be upfront about what's going on and let's talk about it, but I don't want you to sneak. So because of that, we are very liberal in our approach a lot of times. And my husband most definitely is there to balance that approach. He'll be like, okay, we're good here. Bring it on back in here. We talk about it and then we, bring it to the children.
I actually quite admire her approach to that. But I do appreciate that perspective because it eliminates so much stuff that like a lot of parents that we've talked to, friends of ours that have dealt with things with their kids, we just haven't dealt with. And I believe that that's due to a lot of, like, of course, just God in our lives, and us, praying for our kids and doing things. But I think a lot of it has to do with the way Takia deals with them. Like, she pulls no punches. She's like, I'm not going to let you go to school and be caught off guard by peer pressure and kids trying to get you to do stuff. I'm going to tell you all about it right now at 4 years old. Like, that's the type of stuff Takia be doing. And at first I was like, what is wrong with you? But now it's like the kids are not having the same types of issues as the kids. And I appreciate that. I see the value of that. I didn't at first, but I really do.
I think that's very powerful to be parents who are willing to listen. That scripture that we have, our kingdom key today, talks about parents not provoking your children to wrath, not asking things from them that are just extraordinary, things that they can't do, but instead raise them in the admonition of the Lord. So that's that gentle care. That's that gentle relationship. The same relationship you have between you and the Father. He's saying have that between you and your children, and to talk to them and listen to them just like we are able to talk to and listen to our Heavenly Father. And so I think that's a very strong component in parenting. You mentioned something about peer pressure, those peer pressures that they find when they go to school. Govers, have you had any experiences with your child with peer pressure? And if so, how have you handled that?
I do like how say the kid does is I try to keep a definitely. I'm always looking for a teaching moment with Darren. One thing she'll probably remember when she get older is that my daddy's always trying to teach me or put me on game on things, and so I always try to teach her. Definitely right now because she's getting into the age where I'm teaching her to be a leader. Like, don't follow after everybody else. It's okay to be you. And if the crowd ain't following what you doing, that's okay, because at some point people will come on board with how you is, but don't try to change how you is to fit in with everybody else. Like, embrace all your differences.
I think, again, healthy advice, right? Be you. Embrace who you are first, because as soon as we begin to conform to what other people are and who other people are, then that's
don't offer yourself just so you can be social with everybody.
Right. Brown, what about you? Do you remember challenges like that with that peer pressure component?
My wife jokingly, in my prior marriage, I had 2 kids. One of them, when I met her mom, she was 6 years old, and then and then the second kid was the one that we had together, our child together. Yes, thank you. And in that experience, I think I don't so much as remember the peer pressure, but I think I remember more in line with what Darius was talking about, is trying to make each moment a teachable and a coachable moment, and definitely opening the lines of communication, because I believe the more you can help your child to see who they are, then the less those other types of things become barriers for you. Similar to what the Davises were saying, we have different styles and different approaches, but uh, we're very blessed in that area that, we haven't seen some of the types of issues that other parents have seen with their children. So I think that does come with identity, and I think it is essential as a father to definitely help your kids in reaching their identity and understanding who they are, especially self-esteem in girls. That is critical for girls' self-esteem when they have a father in their lives to help them grow in that area. So I think a lot of what kids deal with at school has a lot to do with just, how they see themselves and how they interact with that.
I would agree.
I was gonna say, dealing with peer pressure, thinking about just dealing with my daughter, it was pressure from me, parent pressure, right? Because you have a expectancy for what things are supposed to look like. My daughter is an introvert, so she's good being by herself, chilling. She don't want to have a whole bunch of conversation with a whole bunch of people. She don't know. She ain't got time for all that.
She's like me.
She's like her dad. But she's now in high school. And so like that freshman year, of course, COVID, and then they got to come back in, and I was like, okay, this is your time to learn people. Go out and do this, meet people this way, do this, do this, do this. And she was like, no, Mom. And so I was pressuring her constantly, like every day. Did you talk to somebody? Did you do this? Because I wanted her, A, to make sure she was okay, B, to get out there and mingle. And I understand how important high school is. So she just was like, no. And so finally we had to have a conversation, and she was like, I want you to accept me for me. I want you to know and love me for who I am and how I am. And after we had that conversation, and she just got to express how she felt about a whole bunch of things, I was just like, okay. And there was no more pressure from there on. So we're talking about peer pressure. It's like, the kids have peer pressure, but they also have pressures that are coming from inside of the families. And I think as families, as parents, we have to make sure that we are not trying to put our perspective or the way we think their life should be on them and drive them crazy.
That's why I love that you said that, because it's not just pressure coming from other kids. It's also pressure coming from home, because out of fear or out of, whatever traumas we've experienced growing up, we was kids, from our own parents, we put off on them because we don't want them maybe to experience those same things. So that was good.
Now, you spoke of different challenges as far as peer pressures from within and from without. What are you all's thoughts? And this question goes to both families, but what are your thoughts on today's expression of self-expression? So I know it's challenging for young people who are in school. Gender role, gender identity is really a big issue in this time. And I remember in high school personally, you had certain people who had gender identity issues, or that was their comfort zone. And we kind of just accepted that, like, okay, that's that group, if you will. But today's society has changed and developed even more, where now you have television programming that caters to different gender identity. You have clothing stores that cater to, the world is changing and the world is catering to that. So how do you handle that? How do you talk to your children about that? Have they come to you all about issues? What are your thoughts about that?
We've been very intentional about educating our children, not just about what we believe is right as Christians, but also about the world that they live in. Like, you can't have one without the other. We can't just give them what we believe is right and what, and how we think. Because when they go out into the world, they're developing their own thought. They got their own thoughts. They got their own values. They're in a world just like when we were kids. Our parents were like, "Well, just go do this." When I had low self-esteem when I was going to school, and my dad thought it would be a good idea for me to read about Shaka Zulu and all the black leaders in Africa. He genuinely thought that that was going to boost my self-esteem. It's because that probably would have been something helpful for him, and it didn't help me at all. You know what I mean? And so I went to school, even though I knew all about Shaka Zulu. That didn't help girls to like me. It didn't help me feel good about who I was as a person, or about my complexion, or about how short I was. I mean, it didn't help anything. And so we've been very intentional about making sure we teach them what we believe is the truth, but also educating them about the world that they live in. You're going to have to live in a world full of people who do not think and believe what you believe. We teach our kids to be respectful, to show love to everyone. Your gender is irrelevant. So it's not, we don't get caught up in trying to make our kids treat their friends the way, they were taught. It's like, no, they live in this household, they live in that household. You respect everybody's upbringing. So, and you don't let them judge you, and you don't judge them. But just because we live in the world doesn't mean we're just gonna let the world raise our kids. So we're gonna teach them what we believe is right, but we're also gonna make sure they're aware that, because now, and we don't want to go in too deep into this, but now, I mean, if you're not careful about the words that you say regarding these gender roles and identifications, you can be labeled, and that stuff can follow you professionally. It can follow you. I mean, it's like all of a sudden you're now, words like predator are thrown around, or words like, I mean, you're a homophobe are thrown, I mean, and that stuff can really be damaging, particularly in the age of social media, because now that stuff never goes away and that stuff follows you. So we're very careful. It's like, watch the things you say. Watch, you may believe this, but you don't disrespect other people. You may not agree with how they were raised, but you be respectful of who they are and who they've chosen to be. And so we've been very intentional about that.
And we check in with them. Because look, we live in 2022 now. Look, this is how you were raised. What are you? What are you identifying as? Like, we talk to them, because we don't want it just to be, well, this is what we believe, so you automatically line up with it. While we would love that to be true, we ask them straight out, 1, 2, and 3, A, B, and C, and go from there. And so our kids are like, "Mom, we're fine. Leave us alone."
Yeah, they don't like it.
They don't like it, but
but I think it's
must check in.
So Ben, she's still kind of young. The gender thing has not came up as of yet. Only thing really came up with me and her discuss is the race thing, and so I just help her have a healthy understanding about race and stuff like that. Not even like we were just talking the other day. Like I told her, racism exists. Some people are taught that at an early age. I said, good thing about your new generation is they were gonna still experience racism, but they probably gonna experience it lesser than what we had to do and the generation before us had to deal with, so.
And that's a great point that you bring up about racism. Brown, I was gonna ask you, since your daughter went to a predominantly other minority class as she was growing up, and she was a diver, and so she's in a sport that African Americans aren't generally represented. And so her culture, if you will, that she was brought up in was, it looked a whole lot different than it looked at home. So how was that a challenge for her, if it was a challenge for her? And what growth opportunity did you find in that experience for her?
I'll start with myself and her mom. There was a huge growth opportunity for us, because when you're from a different generation, you're taught and raised a certain way, you see things a certain way. Now here your child is in a whole different generation doing something totally different than you've ever even experienced at that age. So that was the first piece, in understanding that we could not take our own value system and make it her value system. And what I found in doing that is because it's like any other sport or any athletics that you're in, you get embraced based on your ability. Like the player that can play, the team likes him, but the player that's making everybody lose, you probably have some concerns there. So she was able to transition and be accepted in that arena from the standpoint of her skills. Later on, she told me that I see that a lot differently now. She's 24 now. She said, back then, I was a kid and I was just diving with everybody else and just having fun doing what we do. And she said, but now I see that a lot differently. I see that from more of a competitive standpoint, from more of a race difference. I see that a whole lot differently. And that's just from her own growth and maturity in that area. I think the challenge that I have seen is I'm now at a stage of parenting adults. And so with parenting adults, you have to transition from being the driver of their car to being guardrails for the car that they're driving. So I try right now in that transition, and this is what when we're parenting, this is how we see that, is we're the guardrails. They have to drive the car. They got to make the decisions. They have to interact. We're just the guardrails to say, hey, when you come over this far, be cautious and be aware of this. The dynamics have changed for me over the years. When I was parenting her as a little kid to now parenting her as an adult, she sees a lot of what I was trying to show her as a kid, but she just hadn't had the life experience to see that.
Yeah. So Davis says, given the opportunity, what one piece of sound advice would you give a parent in your children's age bracket? What piece of sound advice that you think every single parent needs to know? And first off, how old are your children?
I don't know.
Lauren is
I do 16, 14. Well, they're about to be 16. Lauren will be 16 in like a week. And our son is 13. He'll be 14 in April.
sound advice. What you got?
Prayer. I mean, I know that sounds generic, but it's like a lot of the things that I learned about being a father and how to love them came from God dealing with me and unlearning things that I brought into that relationship. Like I find that I'm not saying that the stuff that I was taught as a parent from my parents wasn't useful, but I think the most useful thing that I've had in my life that I think has benefited my kids the most is my ability to be humble before God, to hear his voice, particularly in those times when I'm the daddy and I'm telling them what to do. And then I realize I've told them the wrong thing. And so my connection with God makes me go back and be like, you know what? I don't always get it right. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to do my best to love you and raise you. I said, but this one I missed. I said, I don't want them to feel like there's this standard that they just can't reach, this perfection, this place as a man, as a parent, as a husband, for my son, even for my daughter. It's like I don't want to put this thing out here. Although it's my job to protect her, I was reminded by a pastor of mine years ago that if I hold the standard too high, then I'm setting them up for failure. And so I have to let them see, it's particularly in me, my faults, when I don't get it right, when my process, let them see me go through the process of struggle, from indecisiveness to finding the right way to go to maybe missing it altogether. Like, let them see all of it so that they know that when they encounter those same situations, it's like, well, then I'm okay because I'm in good company. My father made the same mistakes. My mother, you know, I mean, I've listened to her struggle, so I'm not. They're not going to be condemned. They're not going to condemn themselves because they felt like we failed our parents or we failed God or we failed. You know, what I mean, it's like they know that mistakes are a part of the process, and so I attribute a lot of that to just me staying grounded in God and making sure I stay humble before Him.
I agree with Colombo. Like I said, prayer main thing, so you can get that wisdom on and see things that you normally wouldn't see going on with your children.
And
And
again, how old is your daughter?
my daughter is 11, and then my other two, 19 and 22. So I was really there for them from when they was 6 and 7 years, 8 years old and stuff like that, and watched them grow up too. So, but like I said, my daughter's still 11. So just like I said, prayer and one of the main things I see, man, is having a good communication line with them. Like being able to talk to them, talk with them, and making it where they comfortable to come talk to you about anything. Because I can remember in previous years, like me growing up, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people, like the kids said, kids need to be seen and not to be heard, and ones they ain't had that comfortability where they can just go talk to their parents about anything without worrying about the consequences that come with that. So.
And I think it's important because I am a bonus mom, and I had to understand that role. From the moment I met Darian, has been my daughter. I believe, and I treat her as if she's my own flesh and blood. But I have to remember she has a whole mom and a whole dad, and so I am a supporting role in her life. I'm a part of her village, if you say. And so I do have, some say in what happens in our household, but she has a whole nother household that she goes to. And so I think it's important that in that role that you understand that, so there's not a lot of strife, or like we don't have to fight about things. And I never wanted to put my husband in a situation where I'm wanting something, and it's putting a strain on what he can do for his daughter because of her mother. You know what I mean? Like I never wanted him to be in the middle of us trying to pull for her, because who loses in the end? The child. And so and that's why I love the fact that he is still very, very, very active in his other children's lives. Like, that's something I never wanted to take away from him. So I think understanding when you come into a relationship with someone that already has children, to understand what are we doing best for the children. Like let's deal with if there's what other issues are going on with us as adults, so that the children can really have the best of everything. So I think that's so important.
And Brown, what about you?
Yeah, we definitely need prayer, and we definitely need that piece and our experience and our relationship with God as we grow. I think I've found for me, in addition to that, is the relationship with your kids. Being able to give them a platform where they can come and tell you anything. And that anything might not always be something that you're excited about, that you want to hear. It might be something that upsets you greatly. But if they feel that they don't have the platform to tell you that, or that you're going to judge them critically, that's a barrier to the relationship. So with us, with our blended family, great advice from my pastor. She said, love your new blended children just like you would your own. Treat them the exact same way you would your own. That was an easy solution. I didn't have to figure out anything. I just love them, and they just love me back. So in our blended family, I've established, I think, a pretty good relationship with all the kids, where they call me bonus dad. So I'm bonus or I'm RB. But it's the relationship with them that I'm not judging you. It's great to have standards, and you want to let them know what those are. Right. So you definitely want to give them that, but you also want to give them the room to be able to say, well, this is how I feel about that, and this is what I see. Then that gives you a starting point to navigate and walk with them as they go through their own journey, their own growth, and their own life experience. So I think the relationship for me has been the key.
Very nice. And then Mrs. Davis, what would be your one piece, your one nugget?
I think it's already been said. Just give them space to grow and talk to you, and let them show you who they are. Well, as parents, we most definitely have to guide them. One of the things I used to pray, and I was like, God, these are your gifts to me. So show me how to mother them. Show me how to parent them. And my children, like everybody's children, they come in the world with their own little personalities. So I most definitely allow them to express who they are, and then I guide them through that. So that's what we're learning and going through now. And I think that's been the best thing ever.
Very beautiful. Well, I hope you all have enjoyed tonight's show. Let's recap that a little bit. We have those key nuggets are parental humility and vulnerability. So in any stage of your children's expressions, please remember that from that kingdom key that we had earlier, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4. Also, we heard open communication. And so having that open communication with your children in any spectrum of time is going to be a benefit for them. And also what's best for the children, considering that at all times, whether you're a blended family, whether they're simply your children. Robert and I were talking the other day, and I mentioned that when people are in the store or you're in public, your child does something that you don't care for. Generally, when you discipline that child, the question should be, am I doing this because of how I look in this moment? Or am I doing this because of my child's behavior? And more times than a parent may realize, they are disciplining their child based out of how they are looking in public, how this thing that's happening makes them look. And so I believe that understanding what's best for the child will help parents stay in alignment. And again, we heard open relationship, having that open relationship with your child. That's going to help you at any age group to interact with them, to connect with them, to help them to understand that you're still there for them. You're their covering, and you love them, and you want what's best for them. And then give them the space to grow, giving them that space to grow and letting them be individuals. I feel that is a very strong component to being self-expressive. And so we're so delighted that you all have joined us. Thank you, thank you, thank you, husbands, for taking your wonderful time out. And thank you, Snuggums. And we are so delighted that you and yours have joined us tonight. We can't wait to see you next time, and we'll see you then.
Hi.
We need to discuss our royalties for us being a part of this.
What royalties?
I
He's right
agree.
there. I'm right here.
Okay.
Our
We'll
percentage.
get
Our
us
percentage.
connected. See?
I had you before this.
You know what? No. We're not.
You don't pay me with stuff I had before the show. That's not how that